What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Wildcat Cave. Mark Pope is cooking.
Did somebody say boom?
Boom is right. The Cats have gotten 5 commitments in 5 days and currently hold a top 3 transfer portal haul. All before Kentucky lands potentially their best player in Jaxson Robinson. Mark Pope and company are up to a 9-man roster with a few spots left to fill, and today we'll take a look at who'll be on the team next season and what Kentucky still needs in the transfer portal. Before we dive into the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel by hitting the button down below. Also, hit the notification bell, that way you don't miss out on any future videos or breaking news. And then head over to X and follow the channel there as well, at Wildcat Cave BBN. Mark Pope and Kentucky now have enough guys on the roster to at least begin practicing. So far in the portal, Kentucky's kind of loaded up on front court guys. I think their belief was that there's plenty of talented guards in the portal that can play in Mark Pope's system, but not nearly as many bigs that can, so they wanted to make sure they got those guys first. And up first with their additions was Amari Williams, a big guy out of Drexel. He averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks for the Dragons last year. He's a 265-pound back-to-the-basket big. If you watch his game, you know that he can handle the ball pretty well. He's not scared to put the ball on the deck, dribble a couple times to get a better look at the rim. Not super turnover prone, so that's something you see out of those big guys a lot. He seems to be pretty okay handling the ball. He's a really good passer out of the post too, which is something that's crucial if you want to be a big in Mark Pope's system. And then finally, he was a 3-time CAA Defensive Player of the Year. The first ever in that league to three-peat the Defensive Player of the Year. So it's very clear with Mark Pope, he wants to build a roster around defense first and then let the scoring come naturally. And this is a perfect big for that type of play. Then we have Colin Chandler. He's been out of basketball for 2 years on a Mormon mission. He was the number 33 overall recruit in 2022. He's a 6'5", really tall, really athletic guard. He's a really good 3-level scorer. He can shoot the ball decently well. I wouldn't call him an elite 3-point shooter, but the threat is definitely there and guys aren't going to be able to sag off of him. He can pull up from the mid-range, and he's good enough around the rim to where if he can get past his guy, he's pretty good at finishing. So overall, I don't know that he's going to be our star player next year, but I do think he's a good addition, possibly a really good backup point guard or a guy coming off the bench. And then we have Lamont Butler from San Diego State. This guy's played more tournament games in the past 2 seasons than Kentucky has in the past 5 years. He obviously took San Diego State to the national championship, not this past tournament, but the one before where they lost to UConn, and then lost to UConn again this year in the Sweet 16. He did in the 2022 tournament, though, hit the game winner against FAU to send them to the championship game, so we know he's not scared of the moment. Last year, he averaged 9 points for the Aztecs on 42% field goal percentage and 31% from 3. Obviously not a stellar 3-point percentage. 31's not all that great. His shot is getting better and has gotten better throughout his career. I still don't expect him to be a 40% 3-point shooter this year, but 42% from the field for a guard isn't all that terrible. He was an NCAA All-Tournament team when they went to the championship, and another Defensive Player of the Year in his conference, which was the Mountain West, which was one of the better conferences in basketball last year. Maybe not the Big 12 or the SEC, but definitely better than at least one of the power conferences. So to be Defensive Player of the Year in that conference just again goes to show the type of guys that Mark Pope is going after. Then we have Travis Perry, Mr. Kentucky basketball this past year, obviously won a state championship. The number 75 overall recruit in the country. There's not a whole lot you can say about him. I'm sure most of you guys already know a lot about him. But his thing on this team and what I believe his role is going to be, he's going to be a catch and shoot guy. He doesn't shoot well or shoot a ton, honestly, off of the dribble. He can get to the rim and finish. He might be a little undersized for that in college, at least at this level. But as a catch and shoot 3-point guy, he can absolutely earn minutes. I don't expect him to come out and be Reed Sheppard, but I do think there's a role and a spot for him on this team. Then we have Brandon Garrison out of Oklahoma State. Again, another 6'11" big guy. Former McDonald's All-American, so he has the raw talent that Kentucky is used to in years under Cal. This one it seems like they kind of took him over Great Osobor. Not that Kentucky doesn't want him, but Brandon Garrison never even took a visit to UK and then called Mark Pope while Osobor was on campus and was like, "Coach, I want to come here." And they got the deal done. I think Great was committed to taking all of his visits and really taking his time doing this. And Kentucky took the view of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush here. Something I think Mark Pope really likes about this is he still has 3 years of eligibility left. So this isn't, I think Great only has 1. So they're looking into the future, recruiting guys that can come back and be impact players for years to come, not going all in on 1-year transfers and really establishing a culture in the program. He did only have 7 points and 5 rebounds last year for Oklahoma State, but he's a good physical guy down low. He's not scared to finish through contact. He has a nice little mid-range floater too, that 8 to 10 foot away from the basket. So overall, I don't know if he's going to be a star for us, but again, a really good piece in what is going to be a really fun system under Mark Pope. Then we have Otega Oweh, a guard out of Oklahoma. Again, another big guard. We see that Mark Pope likes these 6'4", 6'5" guards. He had 11 points a game last year for Oklahoma and shot 37% from 3. I think he's going to be around that number, maybe just a little better in this system where he's not going to have to create as much because Mark Pope runs sets and plays to get his guys looks. And as a spot-up shooter, I really like Otega Oweh. Outside of his three-point shooting, he's a 50% shooter from the field, which for a guy that takes a lot of shots, especially a guard, that's a pretty good number. He's a really, really good defender as well, was in conversations for Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12, and he's more of a slashing type of guard, not a catch-and-shoot, stand on the perimeter guy. He likes to get downhill, get by his guy, and get to the rim, which is something not many of these other guards we've gotten so far do. And then you have Andrew Carr, again, another like 6'10", 6'11" big guy. He plays more of a stretch 4 even for his size. He averaged 14 points and 6 rebounds for the Demon Deacons last year. One of the really nice things about this guy is he's a really good passer and he fits Mark Pope's system perfectly. Out of all the bigs we've gotten so far, maybe not the most talented, maybe not, the most athletic, but he fits this system possibly the best. And he can and he will shoot threes. He shot him at 37% last year for Wake Forest. So as a stretch 4 or 5, that's really, really good. Mark Pope likes to play that 4 and 5 out style. So I think Andrew Carr might be one of the best fits for this system. And then we have Kerr Kriisa. Originally started his career at Arizona, transferred to West Virginia, and is now coming to UK. Again, a 3-point specialist. He shot 43% from 3 last year. He can catch and shoot, or he can take the shot off the bounce. Not something a lot of guys that we have right now can do. Most of these guys that we have that I've already talked about are catch and shoot type of guys. Kerr Chrissa is a guy that can create his own shot off the bounce. Again, obviously at 43%, a really good 3-point shooter. The one negative thing about this guy is he is a little turnover prone. We're going to have to work on that. If he can play the role of a 3-point catch and shoot guy for Mark Pope, then I don't think we have to worry about the turnovers too much. Like I said, Pope, when this guy is in, he's going to run plays and sets and get open looks for his shooters. So I don't think Chrissa is going to have as much pressure or whatever to create his own shot. I think the system and the plays will get him that. Again, not going to be your star player, but if he's coming off your bench as your 6th or 7th man, especially in spots when you need shots or you're on a run and you want to extend that lead, I think he can be that role and fit it pretty well. And then finally we have probably the best shooter in the country, one of the best transfers in the country, in Koby Brea out of Dayton. As a freshman, he was A10 6th Man of the Year. He had an injury his sophomore season, so he didn't play as much. I don't know how much of the season he got through, but I know it was limited. And then obviously came back last year to be the best 3-point shooter in the country. Better than Reeves, better than Rob, better than Reed. He shot 50% from 3 on 200 attempts, so he made 100 threes last year. His field goal percentage is 51%, and like I said earlier, for a guard, that's really good. And then he was just probably a top 5 transfer available in the portal this year. His top 5 was all 5 Blue Bloods in Duke, Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, and UConn. So if that's your top 5 list as a transfer, you're pretty good. You can look at this however you want. I call it a win for Kentucky and for Mark Pope, one of his first big boy wins in recruiting. Now, there's stories out there that UConn could only take one of Mahaney and Brea, and I don't think they chose Mahaney. I think Mahaney just said yes first. So that eliminated UConn. Kansas took the other guy, I can't remember his name, but they took him as a shooter. And then it was really Duke, Carolina, and Kentucky won out. So again, another big boy win for Mark Pope. Now, like I said, that's only 9 guys currently on the roster, which on a lot of teams would be enough guys, and they would just fill the rest with walk-ons or bench players. But Pope regularly plays 9 or 10 guys, and even his stars in his system get like 25-ish minutes per game. It's just the system he likes to run. But my point is, there's still room to have more guys, and I wouldn't be shocked if Mark Pope takes a break for a week or 2 or 3 and leaves 4 or 5 of the remaining scholarships open for late portal ads like grad transfers and guys that are testing the NBA. I do think that the roster as is has some weaknesses. In my opinion, with these last few spots, Kentucky needs to get a few specific pieces to kind of round this thing out. Number 1 is they need a dominant, experienced point guard. We need a guy who can pass and facilitate the offense at a high level. And while we have some point guards on the team now, I wouldn't say that facilitating is one of their specialties. Maybe that's a guy like Kaderi Richmond or Davon Smith. Next, you need 1 or 2 more stars, like stars. I really like Koby Brea, but I don't think he can be your leading scorer next year and Kentucky be really elite. I think Jaxson Robinson can be one of those guys when or if he ends up here next year. And maybe Great Osibor if he still decides to come to Kentucky, which I think is starting to be more unlikely. Or it could be one of those point guards I just mentioned that hasn't committed. But either way, we need some guys who can create their own shots. And finally, I think the Cats probably still need another wing, even if they get Jaxson Robinson. Specifically, we need a good wing defender. We have really good defenders around the rim and on the perimeter, but we need a guy with good size who can move. I'm not exactly sure who's on Kentucky's big board to fill this role right now, but I do see it as an area of need. All in all, Mark Pope has been on a mission since he touched down in Lexington. I've said this before and I'll say it again. This is all new to BBN. We have to get used to a new way of running things and how we approach recruiting in the portal. But by all accounts, it seems like Mark Pope is setting up for success in year 1. That is going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Like and share the video as well, and let me know in the comments what you think about Kentucky's current roster and who you want to see them go after to finish this thing out. I'll see you guys next week. Go Cats.